Right, let's have another update because this is such a fast developing set of stories. So we have from the Financial Times the analysis that the UK has got the highest rate of excessive deaths per million than any other country they looked at. And they were only looking at countries that have comparable data. So that is mainly the European countries and the US, but also some South American countries. But essentially, the UK now at approaching 900 million excess deaths per one, 900 excess deaths per million people is the highest rate out of all of the countries that they were looking at, even overtaking Belgium, that small country who had a horrendous coronavirus deaths per million rate. So that's pretty grim, and that's pretty damning. Excess deaths is, of course, a very useful, robust statistic to use because previously we had problems of, deaths in care homes and versus deaths in hospital, and whether people had been tested for coronavirus before they died. But excess deaths relative to the last 5 years is a very solid indicator of what coronavirus has added. So this is us now. And in fact, the Financial Times does some extra analysis going into it that also looks like the number of people you have infected at the time that you lock down is the real indicator of just how badly you mismanage it. So if you've got a low number of infected people and you're locking down early, then you've got a small problem when you lock down that you can then track and trace and control or whatever. However, if you let it bloom and then lock down late, which was actually directly and deliberately the UK strategy, only lock down when you have to, was the idea at the time, because you can do it for a limited period of time. You're locking down with a bigger problem on your hands, which takes longer to sort out, which means you have to stay in lockdown later, which means that you've got a bigger economic problem as well as a bigger health problem. And that's where we are. So that piece of analysis come out is quite shocking, and basically whichever way you slice and dice our national response and the numbers are on it, it really does not compare favorably to any other country. So that then brings us on to the other thing, which is just breaking news now from about an hour ago or so. Durham police have confirmed, as per their investigation, that Dominic Cummings did break the rules. So this is something that a lot of people were waiting on. I remember there was a thread by Beth Rigby saying that all of the new intake of Tory MPs had been on a Zoom call and had basically agreed that they wouldn't be calling for Dominic Cummings' resignation, no matter how angry their constituents were, unless there was new information which really undermined his story, or there was some serious new development like a police investigation having a finding on it. Well, that's now happened. So it'd be really interesting to see what those new Conservative MPs do. Do they hold to what they basically agreed amongst themselves? So that also then exonerates Emily Maitlis, who last night was reprimanded publicly by the BBC for her introduction to Newsnight, and that has caused a huge scandal and furore in itself as to whether she overstepped the mark when she stated that he had broken the rules and the whole country could see it, but the government couldn't. The fact that the police have come to this finding, as well as polls backing her up, adds another dimension to that too. So then we come back to the thing which I've been doing every day, is like, what do you do about it? How do you make a difference here? And the calculation still by government is that they can ride it out. There was Patrick O'Flynn, the right-wing commentator, saying, doing a little poll on Twitter saying, when we come round to the next general election, what's it going to be about? The economy, the NHS, education, or that bloke who drove to Durham? So really, really cynical attitude abounding that we can break the laws or cover people who break the laws and get away with it because by the time of the next election, it'll all be forgotten. But that's not quite the case, because for those people who have seen family members and friends die and couldn't go to their funerals, for those people who've had really traumatic circumstances, they don't forget their impression of your character when your character needed to be on show. So this isn't going away. This really drops a veil on how people see the government. And so here's what you need to do. Instead of just writing to your MP again, because, you know, it feels as though that maybe they're waiting for the number of emails to be dropping, yada, yada, yada. Here's what I think you should do. I think you should draft an email, get it ready, and then at 8 o'clock, when everyone's doing the clap for carers thing, you press send on it then. And so emails are pinging into their inboxes faster than they can clap. You know, 1 email, 2 email, 3 email, they're all coming in to those inboxes of the MPs. And that's Conservative MPs and Labour MPs and SNP and Lib Dems and Plaid, all alike, right? Because you need to keep them topped up on your opinion and what you think. But here's the key thing now, and that is for those Conservative MPs that have actually come out, and you can look up the list of them. There are 60 that have criticised. There are 44 that said Cummings should resign. That's so far. Give them support. If that's your MP, give them support. I don't care whether you voted Tory or Labour or whatever last time. I mean, these people are in a really tough situation now because there's a bunch of the sheeple politicians in the middle who are intimidated, but they've already exposed themselves, and they really need the support and love, dare I say, of their constituents who agree with them to help them hold that line, to help buttress them, to say that they are doing the right thing. Please continue to do the right thing. For those, for all MPs, and I mean, the argument is as follows, you know, there is no moving on from this because the next steps that the government want to go into absolutely rely on public trust of the government. If you're going to do a track and trace system, it's not mandatory at the moment. You need people to be complying. If people think that they have to make sacrifices for the government, but the government is not going to sacrifice anything for them, it won't even sack a guy who is now being found by local police to have broken the laws, and they're not going to do anything about it. Why should anyone make sacrifices for what the government wants when the government won't make sacrifices for them? Now, you can say, of course, track and trace is in order to, you know, protect you and da-da-da, and that's all fine, but there is that thing of mood that the government's going to find hard to get over. Bound into that is that, would you follow a track and trace system if you think your government is irresponsible? Firstly, it's putting mates over public health and public safety. And secondly, is it okay and checked out for data privacy? Because central to all of this effort is, again, Dominic Cummings and his dodgy connections. And we all know what we think of him now. There is a real lack of trust there. And then furthermore, on top of that, this whole disaster, well, who's it had, you know, at the center? Even the government itself have been saying we can't get rid of Dominic Cummings. He's been central to our national effort on coronavirus. Well, hello, we've just clocked in as the worst in the fucking world, and you still want to rely on the same guy who's been liaising between the science committees and government and their key strategy, including the comms strategy, him as the centerpiece, him guiding it all, when he has been untrustworthy himself with the blog posts and how he communicates data, as well as not being prepared to show the honor that you should and actually follow your own rules. So there's a massive millstone of lack of trust around the government's neck and every single Conservative MP's neck, while Dominic Cummings gets to just sit there and continue to mismanage the whole government program. That's what you should be writing to your MP, that there can be no moving on from the chaos to sensible without dropping Mr. Chaos first. That's what you've got to write to your MPs. Get it all prepped, and then when it hits 8 o'clock, just like a Twitter storm, that's when all of those emails go out. And there are other people calling for you to, clap and then send emails as well. So let's all just coordinate that, because that's dead important. Okay, please share this video, but more importantly, just share the core messages in it. Call up your family, call up your friends, call up your colleagues, share scripts of what you want to write together so that you clarify it for yourselves. If they haven't written to their MP before, encourage them to do so, nudge it, make it a mutual bind, but get all of that prepped. Okay, so it's 2 o'clock now. This is at 8 o'clock. You've got 6 hours. What else are you going to do for the rest of the day that's of importance to this country, right? So please spend your time structuring that, because it's dead important. All right, thanks very much. Catch you later. End broadcast.